Oh, that little Zoom thing. Hey, everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. My guest today is Meryl Fury. Please welcome her to the show. It's nice to officially meet you.
Oh, thank you. It is so nice to be here and to meet you also.
Yeah, wherever you are, it looks beautiful. Your background, your home, I don't know where you are, but it looks beautiful.
It is my home. We actually live in a barn. My husband took down a barn and reconstructed it on our property. So that's what you're seeing.
Yeah, no, I've heard the saying you grew up, you're like you grew up in a barn.
Yes, we have those children.
That's fantastic. And you're in Wisconsin. What's the temperature there, if I may ask?
Well, oddly enough, today it is bright and sunny. It is 37 degrees according to the Weather Channel.
Okay, so that's mind blowing because I live in California near Palm Springs, and today it's 36.
Ooh.
I cannot believe that it's colder near Palm Springs than it is in Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's surprising.
That is incredible. So tell us, I heard your story because I've seen quite a few of your videos with Dr. Ajay Shah and with Dr. Howard Jacobson, but not everybody might be familiar with your story of going first vegetarian at 15. I love the reason. It's not a reason that everybody would have thought about.
Well, okay, so I'm going to date myself. All right. So when I was 15, that was 1975.
Me too. Are you a 1960 baby?
I am.
We're in the same year, the year of the rat.
That's right. That's right. Well, at that year, 1975, the cost of beef went up really high. I don't know if you remember any of that, but I remember my mother complaining endlessly about the cost of meat and the cost of beef. And, you know, all meats kind of went up at the same time. So chicken went up and fish went up and pork went up. Everything sort of beef dragged all the market up like that. And my mother was a phys ed teacher. So she had been really well trained in the 3 square meals a day, and every meal had to have meat and milk, and, you know, the vegetables and fruits were like sides, and the main thing was the animal products. So I had a really good girlfriend who had 4 kids, 4 siblings or 3 siblings, 4 kids in the family. And her mother was complaining also, how are we going to put meat on the table for all you kids? You're not going to grow up big and strong if you don't have meat, blah, blah, blah. So my girlfriend and I decided at 15, what we could do to keep our mothers calm and to save the family budget was to stop eating meat. So we made this agreement between the 2 of us. And I remember my mother came and picked me up from my girlfriend's house that weekend. And I announced in the car, Mom, I am not going to eat meat anymore. And she about drove off the edge of the road. She was pretty sure that meant I would have rickets or something, you know, and that's how it started. That night, she tried to feed me spaghetti with meatballs, which was one of her favorite dishes and one of her signature dishes. And I remember I just told her, I'm not eating meat. And her response is, yes, you are. I take care of the groceries. That is not your job to worry about. You have to grow up big and strong. I know what you need. Eat these meatballs. And I just looked at her like, okay. Sat down at the table, rolled the meatballs off to the side, and that started it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great. Because a lot of people think, oh, being vegan, being plant-based is so expensive. But that's all the countries that are healthy are eating things like rice and beans.
Yeah. So not true. It's just not, it's a myth that it's expensive or difficult or, well, now you and I both know you have to cook, right? There's no real convenience foods that you can eat a lot of and stay healthy, right? But the myth of it being expensive is just that. So,
absolutely. If only, God, can you imagine if the healthy choice was the easy choice?
That would revolutionize the world. Absolutely. The world would turn upside down.
Energy conservation principle. That's the thing. And that's why, you know, fast food, it's so convenient for people.
Yes. And so deadly. I have family members that I watch, you know, they get sucked in by the convenience, the ease of it. And I totally understand. You got kids and you want to drive home and, you know, get something on the way and have the kids fed and then, you know, sit down, do homework, do other things. But it's just horrific for our health. Deadly. Deadly, deadly.
Absolutely. So 15, you became vegetarian. When did you transition to vegan?
Well, it was a very gradual process. I probably completed it about 6 or 7 years ago. I think it was the last big salmonella fecal contamination outbreak in ground poultry that stopped it. But all along the way, I actually read a book when I was probably 17 that was called Survival into the 21st Century by Victoras Kulvinskas, who has since then been, ridden out on a rail, I think. But it was all about gradually refining your diet and progressing toward breatharian is what he was recommending.
Well, that's a little bit too extreme,
too extreme for me. I do not aspire to that anymore. But there was a time where I was chipping away at my diet. So I went raw vegan for a while and sprouted raw. And thankfully, for whatever weird reason, thankfully, my body rejected dairy products. I realized, and accepted that I had a dairy allergy, which I can't manage. And then fish. Living in the Midwest up here by the Great Lakes, I can't eat the fish. It's creepy. Yeah. I did spend some time in the Virgin Islands, and that's a very different way. That's a different fish, right? Those tropical fish are very different. But here, I just gave it up completely.
You're a registered nurse. Had you been exposed at all to a plant-based diet during your career?
No, AJ. No. That doesn't happen. I'm going to tell you a funny story, though. I used to manage clinics for federally qualified health centers, right? And in one of the clinics, this is after I was pretty well steeped in the understanding of plant-based nutrition and all that. And especially this time of year, the drug rep companies would be bringing in pizzas and baskets of chocolates and just all kinds of stuff, all kinds, none of it really healthy. And when we would have those lunches, I would always tell them, okay, the rest of the girls like to eat that stuff. I don't. Bring me a salad, bring me, some kind of a vegan soup or something like that. And I remember at one point, we had a nurse practitioner who started working there, and I had worked very hard to develop the culture around health among the employees, right? And we got a new nurse practitioner in, and her thing was to bake. She baked something every time she came in. And she and I literally almost went toe to toe over how she was undermining the health of her coworkers. Everybody in the clinic was trying to lose weight or manage some kind of a health concern. To your question, in traditional nursing education, no, we don't learn anything really about plant-based or the value thereof. We learn about the same stuff that doctors learn. Calcium is for this, iron is for that, low potassium is for something else. Diabetes, send them to a dietitian. It's kind of like that.
Yeah. So are you the only vegan you know in Wisconsin?
That's a great one. Because this is the land of cheeseheads.
That's right.
And if you're not a cheesehead, you are a meathead. I live with a meathead. He's a self-proclaimed. Those are his words. So no, I'm not actually. Thankfully, I lead a nonprofit, and the nonprofit is called Plant-Based Nutrition Movement. So I know a fair number of vegans and heavily plant-based people. If they're not completely vegan, they're heavily plant-based.
What about the kids? Which way do they lean, towards mom or dad?
More toward mom. My eldest is a very adventurous omnivore, super adventurous. Like, go to South Korea and eat eels that twirl up your chopstick. Like, whoo. And the two younger ones are really mostly plant-based. The one goes out and eats sushi every now and then, and the other one is vegetarian, so she eats cheeses.
Nice. Tell us about your nonprofit.
Nonprofit, thank you, is called Plant-Based Nutrition Movement. I'm in Wisconsin, like you said, which is like Illinois is right behind me, like 5 minutes that way. So the nonprofit was started in Illinois by Dr. Stephen Loam, who is an interventional cardiologist.
Yeah, he's been on the show twice, once by himself and once with his daughter.
Okay, well, he's who started this nonprofit. And he led it for, well, I'm guessing then you heard his story about how that happened. And after a year of leading it, he decided to step away. I think having 6 kids and a full-time cardiology practice and all that, leading a nonprofit is almost a full-time job by itself, right? If you want it to thrive. So he stepped away, and I was elected to be president and CEO.
Nice. So what kind of things do you do?
Oh boy, so lovely. I love this work. So we get to do education for anyone who is interested in transitioning to a whole food plant-based diet. Prior to COVID, it was very much hands-on, hip to hip. You know, we would have potlucks and we'd have immersions and we would talk to people one-on-one, invite people to our house, go to an offsite place, and just support people in whatever way they needed support. Very much meet them wherever they were and work with them. Since COVID, we've gone online. We do presentations and I'll say trainings, education sessions that are targeted toward communities that really need information. So for example, this past February, we did one that was targeted for the African-American population, in particular because of all that came out about the health disparities that were so obvious as a result of COVID and the impact of COVID, right? So we did an in-person, an online training with Dr. Kim Williams, and we had testimonials by people in the community, and we invited faith-based groups a lot from all over the country. We did another one in August that was for a South Asian community, so India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and those areas, and those were with 2 doctors who are board certified in lifestyle medicine, Dr. Patel from Florida and Dr. Garg from here in Illinois. We also had cooking demos and things like that. And coming up soon, we'll have one for the Polish population, similar format. And in the end of January, we get to host you.
Oh yeah, that'll be fun.
So exciting, right? Yeah, you and Dr. Clapper and Glenn Mercer, and we'll have an educational session on how to own your health. So we're looking forward to that.
What a trio. What are 6 million seeds of change?
Oh my gosh, this is my favorite thing. So I'm a mom, and I probably have extra momminess to go around. I don't know. I adopt other people's children and things like that. And as a public health nurse, I spent a lot of time looking at kids and how they get taught and what they don't get taught in the realm of nutrition. So 6 Million Seeds is a project that we created within the nonprofit. And it is actually, SEEDS is an acronym, and it stands for Students Educated in Environment, Diet, and Sustainability. And it is all about teaching kids in schools about, okay, let's try out different vegetables, different fruits. Why would you want to? What's sustainability? What's regenerative, agricultural practices, using smaller words maybe. And teaching them so they can bring it home to their parents, exposing them to the variety of foods that are available that are well beyond chicken nuggets and McDonald's French fries. Then there's another part to the same project, which is a podcast. And the podcast is aimed at parents, healthcare providers, and educators so that we can get the message to the people who really need to hear it, because they are the ones who manage what happens with children's food all the time. So that's what we're working on. We're actually in the process of developing the whole framework. We're doing interviews for guests and inviting people to speak. And we want everybody. We want people who are into regenerative farming and biodiversity and artists and climate change activists, as well as healthcare professionals and editors and parents and kids too.
Nice. You actually prepared a presentation for us today, which I love.
True.
Do that, because I find that I don't know. I just, for some reason, I was talking about this yesterday when I was hosting the GI Health Summit. Some of the doctors talked and some did presentations, but there's something about when people use slides. It's like, oh, well, I better pay attention. Not that I don't pay attention when there's not, but there's something about slides that, at least for me, maybe I'm a visual learner, but slides somehow draw me in.
Yeah, I think pictures help. Pictures help everybody,
Yeah.
So, yeah. So are we ready? Do you want me
Yeah,
to start?
absolutely. If you, I mean, unless you please feel free if there's more you want to talk about, but I'm sure there'll be lots to talk about once I see what you're going to present.
Yeah. No, we can jump right into the slides.
Great.
All right. I will share my screen. Let me set this up here first. Good. Uh-oh. Maybe I can't do it that way.
Yeah, actually, this is the one time we don't test before. That's when things.
Right. Yeah. No, I guess I got to share my screen first.
It's so funny while you're setting that up, I'll tell you a story about Howard Jacobson because he's a mutual friend. And the first time I heard him speak was at Vegetarian Summerfest and the PowerPoint didn't work. And so he was hilarious. He was so gracious about it. Instead of getting upset at the volunteers, it's not their fault. He would do his presentation without it, but he kept referring to slides that weren't there. It was so funny.
No.
He goes, well, if the slide was there, it would have said this. And
oh my gosh, this is saying that it's failing. Hold on. Let me try it again.
That's okay.
Maybe we can.
Do you have it pulled up on your desktop?
I do.
And did you press screen share?
I did.
Huh.
All right, let's try it one more time. Maybe it doesn't like the order of things.
Yay.
Here it comes.
Just change the view. Otherwise it's working perfectly.
Beautiful.
Nice.
All right. So this is a presentation about a trip or not really about a trip that I took to Kenya, but kind of about a trip I took to Kenya pre-COVID. As a veteran public health nurse, I tend to look at things through the perspective of health. It's a sickness. It's something I deal with all the time. It just goes on and on. It doesn't stop. And while I was in Kenya, that's kind of what I was doing. I was assessing people and assessing situations and looking at food. I always look at the source of population illness because in public health, of course, when public health first started, it was based on looking at, I believe it was like a dysentery or a cholera outbreak, I believe. And they wound up so many years ago determining the source, and the source was a public well that people were using and it was infected. So I tend to look at things from that. What would make a difference in a population if there was something that could be changed? So that's kind of what this is coming from. We'll be taking a look at the nation of Kenya, and it's my tourist lens, okay? And I got to tell you, I'm not a specialist or an expert on Kenya or its people. I'm not from Kenya. I don't even have family in Kenya that I know of. We're also going to look at it through the Blue Zones aperture. So when I was growing up, maybe like you, AJ, I used to watch films or movies, television, all about Jane Goodall. And there was a show that came on called Daktari. There was National Geographic. There was Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. And of course, Born Free. Live Free and Stay Free, which were Joy Adamson's story of her living in Kenya with lions in her home. It's funny to think about it now, but those shows shaped my view of Kenya and Africa in general.
I haven't heard Daktari mentioned in probably 50 years.
Isn't that crazy? Do you remember those shows?
I do remember that show now.
Oh my gosh. So when I went to Kenya, I wanted to go to Kenya basically my whole life, 50 years, right? Certainly since the age of reason, I wanted to go to Kenya. And so for me to get to go was just a trip of a lifetime, literally 50 or more years in the making. So a little bit about Kenya, because I think the country or the continent of Africa is a bit of a mystery for a lot of people. Countries come into being and they disappear, and borders change and things change. So just a little bit of geography here. Kenya on this slide is that green country there that's bisected by the equator. It is bordered by the Indian Ocean there on the west, and Somalia. Wait a minute, let me go in order. Indian Ocean and Somalia on the east, Ethiopia, South Sudan to the north, Uganda to the west, and Tanzania to the south. It is bisected by the equator. And given that I spent my life watching Jane Goodall and all those lovely other shows, Doctari and Joy Adamson, I thought it was hot. I thought I was going to a hot place. We're on the equator, but actually it's quite chilly. People there in Kenya wear winter coats and gloves and things all the time. Given that I'm from the northern latitudes, I probably had an advantage, so I just wore a scarf and hoodie a lot. It was beautiful. As we know, Africa is considered the cradle of humanity, but we tend not to really think about what that means. People have lived in what we now call Kenya for at least 3,000 years, and maybe even longer. They believe the Maasai have lived in Kenya longer than that, predating all explorers. But what we know of Africa and Kenya is what the explorers found. We have no real records of what was going on there before the explorers. European nations actually in the late 1800s decided to divide up Africa and take portions of it for colonialization. So what we see of the countries here are basically remnants of what was divided up by the European nations in the late 1800s. By the early 1900s, Britain was already well into Kenya and colonizing Kenya in its own way. One of the things that the European nations did, and Britain was particularly good at this, everywhere they went, they would dominate the people, right? And destroy their traditional foodways. They would sequester the people off the land, remove them completely, put them in reservations or concentration camps, disallow them from owning. And like in Africa, I'm sure owning land was similar to with the Native Americans. Owning land wasn't really a thing. You have a territory and you live in it, but owning land was not really a concept among African tribes at that time. So Britain made ownership of land for the natives illegal and gave the best farmland to their own white settlers, with, in some cases, 999-year leases for the settlers to hold onto the land, as well as, even after the farming practices were changed and established more toward westernized thought, the natives were not allowed to produce tobacco on their own or coffee or tea. This probably sounds pretty familiar. You've heard these stories before about how native populations are basically marginalized and in some cases completely decimated by these kinds of practices. In 2020, there were almost 54 million people in Kenya, according to the World Bank, and 72% of those people lived in rural areas. And the rural areas are really rural. To the average American, the population looks like a pretty homogeneous group of very dark-skinned people with a few other lighter-skinned people sprinkled in. And in fact, right now there are quite a few more Chinese people coming to Kenya based on economic drivers. There are, in reality, however, somewhere between 42 and 70 different tribes that live in Kenya currently, and they all have distinct ethnographies, languages, customs, and cultures. And it is the six biggest tribes that sort of six biggest tribes that drive what we see as the culture of Kenya. Now, I do want to sort of call out the Maasai, who are only 2% of the population. They are very visible and probably the most well-known because of the way they dress and they adhere to their cultural practices. When I was a kid, even as I was watching Born Free and Doctari and all those, my father used to talk to me about how amazing the Maasai were because they were very regal and they were a warrior tribe. All right, so Kenya is really up against some challenges. It's part of the global South, or what we used to call the third world. The people hold many strong old world beliefs. The only places you actually see first world or global North or Western style amenities are in the cities, and that would be like Nairobi, Mombasa, the big cities, and in the resorts. the intertribal animosity and the destructive colonial past and deep distrust of the government over generations and generations make the forward movement of Kenya very difficult. It's a very difficult political climate. If you add to that, the animals like this giraffe and other animals we'll see in a bit, and the people all vie for land, and it's the animals and the wild parts that drive or pull tourists in, it's super difficult to manage what's going on there. There's no easy answers. Anyway, so we'll look at Kenya and the foodways and the blue zones and the animals and see what we can see. Oh, wait a minute. We got to have some safari pictures because that's what I went there for. So I took most of my pictures with my cell phone camera. Some people, actually, there are a lot of really wonderful photographers on our tour, and they graciously let me use some of their pictures. This one was taken by a friend of mine. His name is Bob Pierce. This large picture on the left is a tower of giraffes. A group of giraffes is called a tower, which is completely applicable. They're eating an acacia tree. Top right, we have Grevy's zebra, which is an endangered species. And bottom right is our topis. Top left is a water buffalo that was taken by my friend Bob. Bottom left is one of two remaining female white rhinos. There are no male white rhinos, northern white rhinos anymore. They've been hunted to extinction, and all we have are two females now, and they're kept in under close observation. She's behind a fence just to try and keep the poachers away. One thing about their horns, which is what the poachers go after, the horns can bring as much as $60,000 per pound. And for a person living in some of the situations we'll look at in a little bit here, $60,000 a pound would be monumental, right? It would totally change a whole family's life if they could get that much for even 2 pounds of horn. That would land them in a life of comfort.
What do they do with it?
They sell it. So in Asian cultures, I believe a lot in Vietnam and maybe China, it's highly valued for its aphrodisiacs and its tonic effects, and that's what it is. They're after it for medicinal purposes. It's really pretty brutal what happens. They will literally behead a rhinoceros and then scalp the horn. Horrible. But if you think about it, $120,000 if you could get 2 pounds of rhino horn. It could build a decent home. It could feed their children, send them to a good school, and let them retire for the rest of their life. A little more on the safari. This giraffe here, I was actually literally that close. That was not a zoomed in picture. And that is on an island that was populated with giraffes for the movie Out of Africa with Meryl Streep. The mountain here on the top right is Mount Kilimanjaro, which is one of the things I always wanted to see. I wanted to see Mount Kilimanjaro and I wanted to see the Serengeti. And when I landed in this picture, I was literally in tears just because I finally made it. Note that Mount Kilimanjaro does not have really any snow on it. If you go back and look on the internet, you search Mount Kilimanjaro even 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you'll see that there's always snow on that mountain. It does not have snow like that anymore. And that is a result of climate change. The hippos in the bottom picture and the crocodile are actually pretty happy with the snow melt and runoff because it gives them more water to wallow in. But that level of water is a result of the snow melt. All right. Same thing here, another giraffe on the same island, and I was literally that close to it. That is not a zoomed in picture. That hog or a boar on the bottom right is a giant African forest hog. I just love the cheekbones on that monster. That's great. And then on the left is a medicinal plant called Caliandra, which was used for blood tonic and upset stomach. Just a little bit more. This is a baboon on the left. They are seen as terrorists within the resorts. They are rude, they'll chase you, they'll steal your snacks, they'll destroy your hotel room, and they'll throw poop on you. The baby elephants up in the top right are orphan elephants. Their mothers were killed, and the babies were left to fend for themselves. And these babies are collected and brought to an orphanage where they're raised until they can live on their own in the wild. Then on the bottom right is a submerged hippo.
They're so cute.
Don't you love them? Oh my God, I love those little baby elephants. I just love them. All right, this is Masai Mara, which is the Kenyan side of the Serengeti. So these are wildebeest grazing, and the two little fox-like creatures in the front are jackals, and they are always found in pairs, the jackals are. Okay, that was fun. Thank you very much for allowing me to reminisce. Now we'll go back to the subject at hand. All right, so most of us, I'm guessing, have heard about the blue zones. And if you haven't, just a real quick explanation. These are 5 areas in the world where we find the highest concentration of people age 100 and above who are still healthy and active and engaged in life. There are, from east to west, like I said, 5 that we know of, these communities. One is Loma Linda, California, then Nicoya, Costa Rica. There's one in Sardinia, Italy, Icaria, Greece, and Okinawa, Japan. There are some things that they've found all 5 basically have in common. And it's, encouraged that people take on these 5 if you want to live in, or these 9, I'm sorry, if you are interested in living a long, healthy life. One is move naturally. Another is know your purpose. Another, number 3, is actively shed stress. 4, eat less. 5, eat less meat. 6, drink in moderation. A note here, nearly every community, except for the Loma Linda Seventh-day Adventists, drink 1 to 2 adult beverages per day. The Seventh-day Adventists basically don't drink at all. They recommend also some sort of faith-based services. Stay attached to your family and stay social. I am also going to suggest here, now this is just my theory, that members of these communities, these 5 blue zones, also have not had the problem of having their long-term foodways completely disrupted by some other culture imposing sick behaviors and manipulating food supply, sequestering land, and destroying food sovereignty generation after generation. In fact, quite to the contrary, the Loma Linda group, like I said, is a group of Seventh-day Adventists. The church, the Seventh-day Church, provides structure and support for people to eat healthy food. It is recommended in their religious practices. They're encouraged to hold tight to those healthy food teachings. And this church even helps source healthy food. And I mean whole food, plant-based fare for the church members. Okay, so let's look at what happens in Kenya. In Kenya, let's look at the blue zones rule or recommendation, move naturally. Well, I've never seen people working so consistently and all day the way Kenyan people do. It is a country of physical exertion. They move naturally all the time. Things that would be accomplished by machines here in the States are done by hand in Kenya. So this is a common scene. A gentleman walking with his cows. He's got a load of sticks or some, I don't know what he's got in his trailer there. But you'll notice he has a trailer, but he's not riding the trailer. He's still walking next to the cows. Washing clothes. This is a terrible picture. I was taking it while we were in a motorboat. But the women are washing clothes by hand in the river. That happens exactly never in the United States, right? This lake is Lake Naivasha, which is the lake that Joy Adamson lived on in Born Free. The name Naivasha means the sound of water moving. Just on the periphery of this lake, some distance away, I'm not going to say it's like visible from the lake, but pretty close, there are huge commercial greenhouses that grow carnations and daisies and lilies and roses, all kinds of flowers. And as those flowers are grown, the fertilizers and the runoff from those greenhouses actually wash into this lake. People use this lake, obviously, to wash clothes, to bathe, to fish, and to collect drinking water, which you can only imagine what that must be like if that's what you're drinking and eating and pulling in for food. This is another example of just physical exertion. This is a little video I'm going to show you. We were on our way to between resorts, and this is people going to market. Again, walking. Come on, here we go. This is our driver talking. This is a marketplace, so people have their stalls and they're selling whatever they're selling. The motorbikes that you'll see here shortly are taxis.
Don't want to stay there, they want to come to the road sale.
He's just saying people don't want to stay in their stands or their stalls. They're coming toward the road to sell their goods. But you can see they're holding up platters of papayas and oranges and all kinds of things. Lots of exertion. These are the motorbikes. These are called bora bora. They're also bicycles that do the same work. These are taxis. So they transport people, as you can see, as well as goods. They're called bora bora because they will take you from one border to the next, either city to city or country to country. The influx of inexpensive motorbikes has really changed the picture of transportation in Kenya over the last 10 or so years. More physical exertion, people walking, tending cows, sweeping the street with a palm frond. It's all work. Even more, building a road or a ravine. Literally, I saw a man busting rocks with a hammer to fix a road. You're tending your cattle or you're riding your bicycle, like this big picture here on the right, to transport goods and services. All the way here on the right, I don't know if you can see my cursor. Can you see my little cursor here on the side?
Yeah.
Okay, here where these yellow containers are, those are water containers. So people literally buy water and transport it in large containers like that. I want to, just hang on to that idea that that's how they get water. Another lady, she is actually spinning yarn.
Wow,
Actually, the scarf I'm wearing today was made at this women's lady weavers, they're called, the collective. And these are women who support their families by weaving and spinning yarn and things like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. AJ, I can't tell you how fulfilling it was to go on this trip. It was absolutely beautiful.
Look at the beautiful color.
Yes. So I'm so glad you brought that out. So another one of the tenets of the Blue Zones is know your purpose, right? This is a Maasai medicine man. He's holding medicinal sticks or twigs, things they would use to help cure people if people were sick. Now, of course, in a traditional setting, it's really important that you know your purpose, because if you don't know your purpose, you're just going to screw things up. You're going to be doing somebody else's job. You're going to cause some upset in the family. Women don't do men's jobs. Men don't do old people job. Old people don't do, right? You understand, right? So the roles are designed and defined by gender and age. The Maasai, you brought up the color, normally wear red. That is one of their signature color. They're a color that's very important to them. In particular, this gentleman is wearing blue because it was a holiday day for him. I don't know if it was his anniversary. I don't remember what exactly he said it was, but blue was a special color for him that day. But defined purpose just helps keep the stressors to a minimum, right? There's no argument about who's gonna build the house. Okay, I'll tell you a funny story. So this is a house he's standing in front of. And to be an African-American in Kenya is a very special gift, very, very special. So I was in a group of Caucasian white travelers. I was the only African-American. And they treated me, the native people treated me very differently than they treated the travelers who were with me. And at one point, this gentleman here said, so do you want to stay? Would you like to stay here with us? And I'm like, I have a tour. I need to keep going. And he said, well, we're going to be moving the houses in 2 weeks. They need to be moved. And that's the women's work. The women move the houses. So if you want to stay, you can stay and help move the house. And I said, you know, thanks so much. That's a wonderful offer. What kind of food do you eat? And he said, we eat milk and blood.
Oh my gosh.
Yes,
Definitely not vegan, huh?
Definitely not. Their primary staple, and I have this in another slide too, but their staple, this is what they eat. This is how they live. Milk and blood. They bloodlet their cattle. These are pastoralists. They herd cows. So they let blood out of the cow, not enough to weaken it. And they milk the milk out of the cow. They mix the two together until the two curdle, and that's what they eat. They're very proud of that. I told them I couldn't possibly because I only eat vegetables and they didn't have any vegetables. So I had to leave.
What is their health like on that diet?
Wow. Well, you know, I wish I could say it was strong. And we'll talk a little bit about the health picture of the country. It's a very young country, meaning in age, people don't get very old. They have lived this way for thousands of years, AJ. And I believe they have adapted. In fact, I read a study once a while back about like, okay, why aren't these people dying of massive heart attacks all the time, right? Because we would think that would promote heart disease and diabetes and high blood pressure. That's what happens here if you only eat animal products. But they, according to the study I found, they were not able to find any evidence of heart disease. They did some autopsies on, I don't know, a very small number of Maasai that they were allowed to do autopsies on, the scientists. And they found that the coronary arteries were very large in the men that they looked at. So they speculate that because they are walking, this is the people who are herding their cows, walking miles and miles and miles a day, herding cattle, that maybe between the exercise and genetic changes over thousands of years, they're able to manage that type of a diet.
That's so interesting. It doesn't sound
fascinating.
It just doesn't sound delicious.
Well, let me tell you, they were mighty proud of it. I think every Maasai person that I talked to told me that that's what they eat. Everyone. And I talked to quite a few. Some people need to leave home to find their purpose, right? So this is a picture of a slum. It's called an urban informal settlement. It's a very nice way to put it. That's just outside the city of Nairobi. There are many such settlements, 11 others, in fact, and they house about 2.5 million people as of 2019. These slums came into being because after World War II, when Britain drafted and cajoled and sent natives off to fight the war for them, the natives came back after the war, and Britain would not let them live in the city of Nairobi. So the soldiers began, Britain did allow them to camp or to stay in a heavily forested area just outside the city. So the soldiers built domiciles and lived near the city because the city was basically the best place to go if you wanted to work and get paid under the British rule and British system at that time. You'll notice that motorcycle right in front, another one of the Bora Bora. This slum is called Kibera. It's actually the largest slum in Africa. See if there's anything else I wanted to tell you about that. Yeah, over time, there's, like I said, maybe 10 other settlements similar to this have grown up around the city. More pictures of the same slum. You can see Nairobi there in the background of the bottom right. So let me say about these houses. They are what we would call a corrugated tin shack, right? They've got corrugated tin roofs, as you can see here, and a lot of the walls are made out of mud. There is no sewage system, no waste management. There are no roads, no ambulance, no garbage collection. And in fact, as far as waste management goes, it could be just a little ditch that runs through the center of your shack where you would pass your bodily secretions when it was time to do that. That ditch runs through every other house that's on your, like on a slope from yours. So not only do you get to experience your own bodily functions, but you get to experience anybody who's uphill from you as it flows through your house. Since there's no sanitary sewers and there's no water, the lakes and rivers, or little streams and stuff, get fouled pretty quickly and pretty thoroughly by raw human and animal waste. You can see in that top picture just a mountain of trash, and there's little children there playing, right? There are in Kibera public toilets, which you can see in the larger picture to the left. Those toilets, they say, service about 50 people. And when those toilets are full, they are excavated and cleaned out by hand. And that waste is also dumped into the nearby river. As all that accumulates in the river, or in buckets or puddles or in the ditch that runs through your living room, it causes just the perfect environment for high levels of waterborne illness like cholera, typhoid, hepatitis, and dysentery. And in fact, the waterborne illnesses and diarrheal illnesses are among the top killers of children in Kenya. Now, fascinating enough, this would be enough to, okay, let me tell you this before I go any further. These units are rental units. So people pay rent to live in these buildings, these domiciles. They're usually 12 by 12. They can house up to 8 people. And there's no running water or sewer. People are still happy to get a spot in one of these houses, though. One of our tour guides actually lives in this informal urban settlement, and he said that people are very happy to have a spot here because it means they're closer to the city and they can possibly have a job, get a job, find a job, right? And then they're able to send money back to their people, their families who may be living miles and miles and miles away, days travel away, and help support their children and their seniors. Regardless of how it looks to us, people who live there are generally pretty happy. Now, Nairobi, back in 2007, there was a survey done that showed that there were about 60,000 homeless people in Nairobi still looking for their purpose, but they were happy to be in Nairobi. Okay, another one of the tenets of the blue zones is eat less meat and animal products, right? Now, according to the World Health Organization, the average Kenyan ate about 2,000 calories per day prior to the pandemic. It's probably dropped a bit now because the tourist trade has taken a terrible hit from the pandemic lockdowns and all that. But at that time, when they did that survey, fully half of the calories came from cereals. In this picture, the cereals are those white slices on the side of the plate. Now, again, this would be a typical meal for local residents. And again, there's a lot of different ethnicities and cuisines that are at play here, but this is not an uncommon meal for people. We can say from the top, let me get down here, let me get to my notes so I know I'm telling you. The top red little cluster there is actually a tomato, red onion, and cilantro salad, which is called kachumbari. To the right, that round little ball there is called mokimo. That's mashed potatoes, onions, greens, beans, and spices.
It's all vegan.
Yes. So this was my meal. I took pictures of what I was eating. And yes, they do eat primarily vegan. They have small amount in a traditional meal, right? So when you're poor and you're trying to just make ends meet, there's not a lot of meat that they eat. Small portions maybe, but a lot of it is vegetable stuff. The darker scoop there on the bottom is called tereri. That's like a similar to Swiss chard or collard greens or other greens with onions. And then the white slices there on the side are called ugali, and that's a cornmeal porridge, which is cooked to stiff consistency and then sliced. So actually, like I said, we were in resorts, and I would go to each chef at each resort, and I would tell them, I eat a particular way. I eat no animal products at all, no butter, no cheese, no eggs, no nothing. What can I eat? And the chef in that resort would actually they would either cook food, especially for me, or they would show me what was available for me to eat, which was just, I felt like a princess. I can only tell you.
Was it good?
It's beautiful. Oh my gosh. Delicious. Delicious. I actually took 2 cooking classes while I was there. So yeah, I couldn't have asked for a better experience. It was gorgeous. Lovely. Now, like we were saying, they do eat meat some, but it's usually to celebrate a particular event, like a graduation from college or a new appointment to a high level position or a wedding for sure. So you can see these are butcher shops. They've got whole animals hanging. They're not selling, briskets or chops or tenderloins. They're selling the whole animal because they're going to be feeding a large group of people. They also will butcher animals for when the animal's not paying its due. So, for example, if a sheep is not producing enough wool or a goat is not producing enough milk to pay for its own upkeep, they will butcher the animal for that reason. These are other ingredients from the meals that we cooked. So we have garlic in the top left. We've got red onion on the top right. Below that is ginger root, and the red is chopped tomato. These are very common ingredients in what they prepare. These are another one of the meals that I helped cook. So we have greens on the large picture on the left. And the top right, that's called matoke, which is stewed green plantain cooked in a just luscious tomato gravy. Delicious. Oh my gosh. And then on the bottom is the meal on the table, plated, well, not quite plated, about to be plated. Notice there are only 4 forks, and those are on the plates for serving. Traditionally, Kenyan people do not use silverware or cutlery. That's a westernized thing. And they put the forks out there for me because they knew I wouldn't know how to handle eating with my hands. In fact, to eat with your hands, you're only supposed to use your right hand to eat with. And I was just making a mess of it. Terrible. But it was a great meal. This is more of typical meals that the natives would eat, Kenyans would eat. So here we have shredded vegetables in the large picture on the left with rice. And on the right bottom, it's curried beans and rice. That's a fruit and vegetable stand roadside again. One of the interesting things is that the fruits and vegetables are very regional, can I say maybe? So on this one stretch of road, only thing you would see for sale would be exactly what this lady is selling here. So onions and maybe some oranges and some watermelon. And then the next stand for the next mile and a half, that's all they would have. Same thing. You have to go to another part of town to get something else, which I found fascinating. I talked to the tour guide and I said, why don't they, like the ladies with the watermelons, why don't they sell carrots and beets and eggplants and other stuff? And he said, no, that would start a war. You can't do that. Region by region, it's very specific which region sells what. This is watermelon, lady selling watermelon and fly swishers. And you can see on the table behind her is a water container. Now she's had to purchase water. And like I said before about the people in Kibera, they purchase their water. the water is not tested. There's no guarantee that it's clean, safe from chemicals, or has an acceptable bacteria count. This is back in Kibera again, another fruit and vegetable stand. Amazing. High amounts of plant foods available in Kenya. More roadside stands. You can see they're dividing up. This is actually in one of the city centers. So you have a little more variety of what's being sold. This was two more typical meals. We had curried beans on the top right with potatoes, and then curried vegetables on the bottom right. And the lady on the left is selling bananas in the middle of the street. Okay, so they don't have a whole lot of like emissions control type rules that people follow. So she's literally inhaling diesel smoke and carbon monoxide all day as she's trying to sell these bananas. All right, so this person is fishing illegally, again in Lake Naivasha. But we know when a person's hungry, they eat whatever they can get. And when his person is broke and hungry, they eat whatever they can get for free. So he's fishing illegally and hoping he doesn't get caught because he doesn't have a license. He's just trying to feed himself and his family. Now, these are the Maasai, which I mentioned earlier, very regal people. This is this same tribe as the medicine man we saw earlier. And although they're only 2% of the population, they are easily spotted because of their adherence to their traditional lifestyle and modes of dress, typically wrapped in red, like these gentlemen are. Those are called shukas. And they're, like we said before, they're unique food ways. They adhere to their traditional diet of meat, milk, and blood. Another one of the tenets of the Blue Zones is have faith. And the people there are quite religious, actually. I don't know, it's something like 80-something%, 83% claim a particular religion. And when the external forces, the colonial forces came in, they made sure they brought their religions with them. So we have Protestants and Catholics and other forms of Christianity, Islam, we've got some atheists. And then notice there's the indigenous African spirituality. There is no challenge, there's no conflict for any individual to hold traditional African spiritual beliefs in magic or shamans or omens or witchcraft or any of that, and hold that side by side with their Protestant Christianity. Here's another little video. This was a group of women hand making ceramic beads. So that's a little pile of balls in front of the one lady who's closest to the front of the picture. They are singing a song here in the factory, and I was told it's about how good God is to the people. All right. Another one of the tenets of the Blue Zones is stay connected with family. And of course, traditionally, if you're not, if you're in a harsh environment, you kind of can't be a loner. You've got to have a family group, and the children are raised by all adult family members. It's all very closely connected, because that is one way, besides from the fact that you love your family and want to be around them, that it certainly increases the likelihood of survival. This is a woman, a Maasai woman. I just think she's so beautiful. Notice the scarification on her cheeks. And that's her little baby. So with high rates of built-in exercise and high rates of plant-based eating, approximately 10% of the calories coming from animal products, and strong faith-based family connections and all of that, you think Kenyans would be thriving into older years. However, and I got to tell you, I love these little faces. Look at them. So beautiful. These are little school kids. But Kenya's not even close to a blue zone, not even close. Life expectancy. So you asked before, AJ, how is their health? According to the World Health Organization, published in 2018, these are the life expectancies. Males, 64 years, females, about 69 years. Median age is 18 years old. Total life expectancy, 67 years if we round it off. And only 2.7% of the population is over 65 years old. Very, very young country for it to be such an old country. Here's gentlemen at the top collecting water, again from Lake Naivasha. You can see in the distance those white buildings behind the clump of, it's pampas grass, I believe. Those white buildings are the greenhouses. And those greenhouses are a serious source of contamination and pollution for that lake. On the bottom picture here, again, the Boda Boda taxi. Notice the mom in the back, and that's a little baby that she's holding. All it would take would be one accident. And that little baby, that will be the end. But this is, you know, these are the risks we take. Most common causes of death in adults, 18 years old and above. In 2016, leading cause of death was pneumonia, followed by malaria, cancer, HIV, AIDS, anemia, heart disease, and lastly, tuberculosis in that order. Deaths due to cancer have risen from about 12,000 in 2010 to closer to 16,000 in 2016, representing an increase of 4.5% annually. Common causes of death in children, respiratory infections, diarrhea. By the time you get to be 5 to 17 years old, HIV and AIDS is a big one. Respiratory infections, pneumonia, and diarrhea, as we talked about before. I mean, the foul water alone and the lack of appropriate sanitation is a huge problem. It cannot be overstated. Now, we cannot ignore the fact that Western cultures have imposed themselves all over Africa. It started a long, long time ago, but certainly from the late 1800s, they've been imposing themselves on Africa. And even with a lot of the colonial forces moving away or, you know, going back to where they came from, their methods and means and their, what was important to them, what they held as symbols of success still linger in the country. So these are some influences on their diet. This is the only place I've ever been where when they say supersize or top up your meal, it meant another hefty portion of beef. If we remember that the people were removed from their land and sequestered and put in concentration camps and everything, it's easy to understand how at some point the people who were the victims of this kind of behavior begin to want what their oppressors have, right? They want that freedom, they want that glamour and all that other stuff, even though they may not understand it comes with a price, which is called cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and other illnesses. This was a commercial that I saw in the 1 hour that I sat waiting in a hotel for before I came back to the States. I saw this commercial probably at least 4 to 6 times inside that 1 hour. This is for a company that produces milk. They produce milk that is in small envelopes or little packages, sort of like the size of maybe like a salt packet or a sugar packet, a little bit larger than that. And they're encouraging Kenyan people to buy these little packets of milk. The problem for me, and again, I'm a nurse, I'm looking at this, okay, something like 80% of the Kenyan population can't digest milk. Remember the Maasai and the Samburu are something like 2% of the population, and they live off milk and blood, but the rest of the population really doesn't do well trying to digest milk. And here's a company insisting, drink our milk. Look at the tagline in that picture, our milk, drink this, right? And then on top of that, it's milk that has to be mixed with water, and we know the water is horribly contaminated, right? It's very interesting, the mental gymnastics that have to go into creating something like this, knowing it's going to lead to illness. It's well, as a nurse and as an African American, it was very disturbing to see. All about the nostalgia for the British time in Africa, right? So here we were at an outdoor safari breakfast. You can see the heavy amount of meats that were on the grill in that upper right picture. This was at the crocodile and hippo sleeping place on the river. You can see we're having champagne, and it's all just a glamorous time. And all I could think was, oh my goodness, from the china to the chairs, it is all about glamorizing and epitomizing that Western way of being as a sign of wealth and attainment. This is what I was eating that day. We had taro root, is that speckled pinkish purple stuff on the bottom. I did not like taro root, not my favorite thing at all. Then matoke, which is the stewed plantain and black beans. And I had a mimosa and some tea. And then on the upper right, those are samosas and flatbread and more matoke and beans. Quite glamorous. And here we are promoting our ways yet some more. We have Pizza Hut and Kentucky Fried Chicken, and we've got Domino's and Burger King.
Oh my God.
This, yes, and this restaurant called Carnivore. AJ, don't you want to go? Come on.
Yeah, sure.
Woo.
Have a glass of water.
Oh. But here we are. And this is in Nairobi. So we are dangling this in front of people who live 8 people to a corrugated tin shack with no clean water and no sanitary sewer. This is what we're doing. Now, this was a pastry that one of the pastry chefs made for me. Like I said, I was just treated like a princess. It was so beautiful. So everywhere I went, I told them how I eat, and they would say, how long are you going to be here? And I'd say 2 days, 3 days, whatever it was. And they'd say, okay, this is great. You come back tomorrow or tonight, you look for me, and I will have your food for you. No one else will have what you have. So the other people in my safari party were generally jealous of whatever it was I was eating because they took special care. This is an apple strudel, a vegan apple strudel that they made for me. Not particularly healthy, had a lot of sugar, had oil in it, but they got me. They did. I ate it. So I think about what can we do about it? That's my public health nurse thing. You know, I want to change the world. I want everybody to be healthy. It shouldn't, logically, it's just not that hard, right, AJ? It's not hard. Just feed people appropriately and stop exporting our sick ways around the world. And really, to me, it's about the children. I don't want to say that the adults are lost causes, of course, right? But we have to start somewhere, that the children don't get this idea that eating this way and living this way, no clean water is acceptable and all that. So anyway, create healthy education for all children. And by all children, I mean all, because in Kenya, if you don't have a uniform, you can't go to school. So if you can't afford the uniform, you're excluded, which means the poorest kids never get to go to school. Provide reliable access to clean water. If anybody wants to donate something to a Kenyan concern, a non-governmental organization, well vet the organization and donate to some group that is going to dig wells or find a way to provide clean water. Same thing for functioning sewage and waste removal. That would make a huge difference for these people. I love these faces. Another thing is stop glamorizing the way we eat and what we have and what we do and how things are in the West. Now, this is not our particular, maybe individual challenge, but in a way it is. In a way it is. So if we could find a way, and I'll say this too, AJ, one thing that this last, all of 2020 and now dang near all of 2021 has taught me is that publication and mass media of what we want people to do and what we want people to understand can sway the whole world. We never had a time before where the whole world shut down, and that was only accomplished through mass media and putting it out there over and over again, right? It's the only way it was known. So if we actually were able to start putting it out there that certain ways of carrying yourself and ways of eating and ways of being are unhealthy for individuals and the planet as a whole, we could tip the scales on this. I love this. This is a little song that this school children sang for us. And I'm going to start it, and then I have to scoot it forward a little bit. Hold on 1 second. Uh-oh. Right about here will be where they start. Mother, Father, where are you? Mother, Father, where are you? I want to go to school. I want to be a teacher. Yes, I can. I want to be a chemist. I want to be a president. I want to go to school. Yikes. Sorry, that one gets me every time. So that's the end of my little story here.
I feel like I was there. I feel like this was a National Geographic show.
Oh, thank you. It was a beautiful.
How long ago did you go?
This was the October 2019. I'll stop the share here. These are just a tower of giraffes crossing in front of us, looking very prehistoric the way giraffes do.
Are they safe, or is every species endangered now?
Every species has had its numbers hit very hard. When we used to watch National Geographic, I don't know if you remember, or Mutual of Omaha.
Mutual of Omaha, yeah.
Yeah, you would see the range was teeming with game, right? There was huge numbers of everything, and it is not that way anymore. There's elephants there in the background. You can see if you look real close, right about the giraffe neck level. There's elephants back there. But yeah, every species has taken its hit, and it's harder all the time. They have national preserves, but people want access to land. People want to build glamorous Western style homes, and that's kind of how it looks. I'll stop the share now.
We really are destroying the planet, aren't we?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It's just, it's painful to watch. It really is.
The clothing is so beautiful. The colors.
Yeah. Yeah.
The blues are so blue and the oranges are so orange. I mean, I would wear those clothes.
I'll tell you, this is my Maasai wrap that I got at that, the Lady Weaver's shop. And these are earrings. I don't know if you can see them.
Those are gorgeous.
From the Maasai camp. Yeah, very beautiful. And like I said, there's 40 to 70 different cultures there, and each culture, well, several of the cultures anyway, have taken particular types of trades or whatever, and they specialize in those trades. And I won't be able to tell you which ones they are, but say, for example, one group specializes in wood carving, one group specializes in government, one group is school teachers, another group works in the trades with their hands or something. So it's
I'm sorry. I just wanted to tell you that Patricia says, I love this presentation. Thank you so much for broadening my knowledge of Africa.
Oh, you are so welcome.
And Amanda,
it's an honor.
It just seems unfair that they have to have a uniform to go to school. Like,
Well,
that's me.
that is a British construct, right?
Yeah, that's just, I mean, as long as it, I mean, that's just not fair.
I agree. I agree. Actually, in the school that we visited, there was one girl who her uniform was really tattered, really tattered. And I asked the school principal, is there anybody who I could buy them a uniform while I'm here so that they can continue to go to school? Or is there some family that in the community that would like their children to come to school? I'll buy 2 or 3 uniforms. What do I need to do? And she told me this one girl needed a new uniform, and I purchased a uniform, and it was all of $13, AJ.
God.
Yeah.
We don't realize how good we have it.
We don't.
We're so spoiled in this country.
Yeah. Gratitude is a huge thing. And honestly, that trip to Kenya just opened my eyes. How grateful. Okay, look where I live, right?
I mean, they're not worried about how many followers they have on Instagram.
No, honey, they are not worried. They would like to just be able to go to work. And even if they have to leave and go days and days away to travel, that they have a job and they can send money back to their family. That's what they want. Beautiful. Beautiful stuff.
I live near Palm Springs, and I'm not a fan of zoos, but when you talked about rhinos, they just got 2 baby rhinos here. I mean, I don't know what rhinos are doing in the desert, but I mean, they're trying to, I guess, save them. That's why they're here.
Yeah. And it might be a different, I don't know what type. These northern white rhinos, those are the only 2 in the world at this time. They were able to harvest semen from the last male before he died. And now they're looking at ways that without risking the life of the females, to harvest eggs from the females and then do surrogate parenting, I think, in another species of rhino. But, on the flip side, okay, if you're living in a 12 by 12 shack with 8 other people and you don't have clean water, I'd be hard pressed to tell you, don't kill that animal if it could support you and 10 other people in your family,
It's still sad.
Tough. It is. It's tough. It's tough. But very beautiful country. I hope I wasn't too depressing.
No, I mean, it wasn't that you were depressing. The world is depressing. You were just showing us parts of the world. Do they struggle with anything like we do here? Like, did you see any overweight people at all?
In the cities, there was some of that. That, like that one slide showed, I didn't read it, but there's some belief that if you're rich and you've attained a certain level of income, that you can drink lots of beer and overeat and be very big. And, that's a sign of wealth. And that's not unusual in subsistence cultures, right? If you have a lot, then you show it, right? But in the rural areas no.
Yeah.
No, there were no little fat children running around and
yeah,
not at all.
Nobody was drinking Red Bull and eating Cheetos.
Not that I saw.
Yeah, that would be so cool if we could. $13, everybody could afford that. We could all buy a uniform. Is there an organization that we can donate to that of that? Because I just wish instead of getting me presents, people would just do that. I don't need anything. I mean, it's not that I don't appreciate it. I don't want people to say I got you a present. I do appreciate things, but I'm thinking like, wouldn't that be cool just to get uniforms or water?
If we, what, AJ, we'll make a plan. Okay. I'll do some research. I'll find some good NGOs. We'll do some vetting and see how we can, oh my gosh, if we could
just change the rule, because that is ridiculous.
It is.
I mean, that's just unfair. That is discrimination.
It is economic discrimination.
Absolutely. Well, this has been I didn't know what you were going to present, but this was just fun. I felt like I was watching a travel log show.
Well, thank you. National Geographic taught me well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, come back. If you have other topics you want to discuss, I would love to have you back. You were just a wonderful guest.
All right. Well, thanks, AJ. It's been my pleasure, honestly. So nice.
Thank you for being vegan and the work you do with your nonprofit as well.
Thank you. And thank you. Keep it up.
Absolutely. Thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back in 30 minutes when my guest is Dr. John McDougall. Take care, Meryl. Bye.